A very warm welcome to my students. Today's topic of lecture is Sinha's comprehensive anxiety test, and it is a very reliable and valid test that has been in use till date. Before I move on to what SCAT is about, first let us try to understand what is anxiety. And I'm sure many of you will know what is anxiety. So, anxiety is an emotion characterized by an unpleasant state of apprehension, worry, often with no clear justifications. It is often accompanied by feelings of nervousness, somatic complaints, and rumination. Rumination, where you are continuously replaying the thoughts which are unhealthy over and over again. Fear involves an instantaneous reaction to an imminent threat, but anxiety involves apprehension, avoidance, and cautiousness regarding a potential threat, danger, or any other negative event. So, even if fear can have some clear physical stimuli in front of them for us to feel the fear, but in anxiety, we can have this feeling, this emotion, even without the physical threat or physical stimuli causing this threat. So, in the case of anxiety, the sense of apprehension and worry can exist and start even without the presence of the actual physical stimuli. Anxiety can occur in the course of daily life and, up to a certain extent, be considered normal and as a motivating factor to reach our goals. If we just pause for some time and we try to reflect what this sentence means, what do you think it means that anxiety can be normal and it can motivate us to reach our life goals? Are you able to relate to some instances of your life? A very common instance that we all can relate right now is examinations. If we do not have the optimal level of anxiety, we will not be motivated to study for the exam the next day. So it drives us to study and perform well. So, this is what I mean by some amount, optimal amount, neither too high, neither too low, amount of anxiety is normal and it could be a motivating factor to reach our goals. Have you heard of the Erics Datsun Law? So, this law it tries to state of how much anxiety is the right amount of anxiety in order to have a good performance. So you can see that in this picture, if you have a low anxiety, your performance it will be not strong. Your performance will be low and you're not likely to perform well. So you have the exam, but you're not motivated to study, neither you're worried or little bit apprehensive about the examinations for the next day. So you're going to experience no anxiety and it could lead you to evade from your responsibility of study. Okay, and the next is high anxiety. If you have a lot of high anxiety, that is very debilitating to our body, to our physical body. What do you think is going to happen? Our body will likely lead to wearing and tearing. We will have a lot of breathlessness. We would be constantly using the washroom, and our performance during that time will not be good because our anxiety is just too much for us to handle. We are not capable of handling this amount of anxiety at that particular time. So our performance again drops down. So, what is the appropriate amount of anxiety? Is the optimal amount of anxiety, which falls right here. And you can see the graph going high up, where it says that an optimal amount of anxiety is going to lead to a optimal performance, a good performance. You will be able to sustain, you will be able to improve on your performance at that time. You will have all of your cognitive abilities still intact and normal and functioning at that particular point. So this is what the law really states. Let's try to understand some theoretical origins of anxiety. From a psychodynamic perspective, it says that whatever unexpressed feelings, desires, conflictual thoughts, and feelings are suppressed deep into the unconsciousness, it manifests as symptoms later in life. And these symptoms could be in the form of anxiety. Then, what is behavioral? Anxiety is an emotion which is learned through association, reinforcements, punishments. So, imagine when you were a child and you did not perform well in the examinations, and one of your caregivers, they scolded you, and that scolding was so significant that it stayed throughout your life. And now, when you look back, you see your exams as the ultimatum to only doing well and no going back. So you know that if you're not going to perform well, you're going to meet with disastrous consequences. Even though those negative consequences may still not be present at that particular time, but you have learned to associate anxiety with examinations. So you have no other choice but to do well. And not doing well does not come to you as an option. We, as human beings, I just want to emphasize on this point, students, is because I want you to understand this as psychology students, that it's okay to make some mistakes. It is okay to do mistakes in life and learn from it. Everything is not a do or a die situation. We have to really be aware that not performing well does not mean that you are a failure in life. You also can have other things in your life that is going well. So always try to look at both the sides of the coin and not just one coin. So this is something, the anxiety with examinations could be something that we learned in our childhood. We know that if we do not perform well, then we are likely to meet with punishments, scolding, beating, not performing well. So all of these, they are all the behavioral ways which is telling you how we could have learned anxiety from our past experiences. Let's move on to humanistic. Humanistic says that anxiety can arise out of conflicts between the real self and the ideal self. So we all have a picture in inner picture in us of who we are as a person and the ideal self of who we want to be. So if there are conflicts in between these two selves, it's highly likely to lead to anxiety. Okay? And another reason could be due to unfulfillment of needs. Like if you're not able to meet your physiological, safety, belongingness needs that are mentioned in Maslow's hierarchy, you could experience anxiety. Existential. What does it mean? This perspective says that anxiety arises from inability to find meaning to one's life and reason for one's existence. Moving on, anxiety disorders. So, anxiety disorders are characterized by excessive and persistent fear and anxiety by related disturbances in behavior. They are most frequently occurring classes of mental disorders which are often comorbid with one another and other mental disorders. So what are the psychological effects of anxiety disorders? So you could experience irritability, loss of tension, fatigue or loss of energy, problems in retaining memory. So we complain during the stressful times. I'm not able to remember this. I don't know why, but I made sure to keep this in my schedule, but somehow I forgot about it. So, a lot of excessive anxiety could actually lead to problems in recalling events from our memory. Then there could be loss of attention, there could be excessive rumination, worry. There are many cognitive errors in thinking, such as you could overgeneralize a particular situation which might have happened in the past, or you could be thinking in all or nothing thinking. That means that if only I pass in this exam means I am worthy. Otherwise, I'm not, if I fail in this exam, I am not worthy. Things in life are not all black and white. They are also gray, and it's healthy to look at those gray options in life as well. Then there is unrealistic tension, which you could experience in yourself, amongst many. Physiologically, you would see that there are headaches and anger, irritability. So in brain and nerves, if you see in this picture, there it is particularly mentioned that there are feelings of despair, irritability, decreased eating, panic attacks, and also leading it could sometimes a lot of excessive anxiety uh, over a few months and years could manifest into depression. Skin, it could have physiologically manifest itself in skin, such as acne and skin problems. Muscles and joints, what kind of consequences could anxiety disorders have? You could have muscle aches and tension, increased risk of reduced bone density. Heart, because your heart is pumping at a very fast rate, supplying cortisol to your entire body, so your heart rate is constantly up and over a long period of time. So it's likely going to lead to high cholesterol, a high amount of heart diseases as well in the future. Stomach, it could have nausea, stomach pain, weight gain, etc. In pancreas, risk of diabetes. Immune system, very important. It has excessive anxiety over a long term. It leads to lowered ability to fight or recover from the illnesses. Now that we have got a complete picture of what anxiety disorder is about, let us move to what Sinha's comprehensive anxiety scale is. So the people who introduced comprehensive anxiety scale is AKP Sinha and LNK Sinha, which the main objective was to provide a comprehensive picture of anxiety symptomatology experienced by an Indian population. So we have many tests that are existing all over the world, but the primary authors were very concerned with how many of these tests were actually applicable to an Indian population. And that is why they came up with a particular scale that is applicable to an Indian population because it was being developed using people experiencing anxiety disorder from an Indian population. This is why the scale is different from the other scales that we have discussed. So, the items of the test were constructed by the patients who visited the Psychological Research Service in Patna University, and a few items from the existing test of anxiety were also incorporated after modifications. So initially there were 315 items that were prepared in Hindi, and these items were given to five judges. Who are these five judges? These people were all from counseling and psychological testing domains. They were given these items to judge whether they were appropriate to measure anxiety in the patients. So they were also asked to score out these items which they thought were redundant. So items which they thought were not useful, they were asked to exclude these items. And based on a mutual consensus and agreement among all of these counselors, researchers, and professors, there was 100% agreement that 70 out of 315 items would only be retained. Sorry, 70 out of 315 items would be removed. And finally, out of these, after item analysis, only 90 items fulfill the criterion which constituted the test in its final form. The reliability of the test is 0.92 and validity of the test is 0.62, which is significant beyond 0.01 level of confidence. Now, administration of the test. So, if you see some of the items in this test, you see that it is self-scoring test. So it will ask you some questions. Do you lose the balance of your mind even under ordinary pressure of circumstances? Do you usually have an unsteady mind? Do you weep easily? Do you feel scared that your tongue dries up? Do you feel lack of sleep? So these items you will have to score in yes or no. So this scoring will only be done by the clients. So your task as a test administrator would be to give these instructions verbatim to the client, that there are some statements which are given in the pages in front of you, and they are concerned with your behavior as well as temperament. You are not going to disclose that is going to measure your anxiety, because that can likely lead to more amount of anxiety for the client. So against each item, continuing your instructions, against each item, two alternate responses are given in yes or no form cell. So you would have to read each item and put your views by a tick mark below yes or no response. Please attend to all of the statements that is given, as your response will be kept highly confidential. Although there is no time limit, please be quick in your work. And this is all that you will be doing as someone who is administering the test. While the client is filling up the scale, attending to the items of the test, you as a psychologist would likely notice the behavioral expressions of the client. If they are increasingly being very anxious, are they folding their hands too much? Are their hands tied up to a closed fist? Are their legs very fidgety? Are they continuously playing around with the items that are present on the table? So you would have to take the observations of some of those. And also, before beginning the test, you would be taking the demographic information of the client, which is very important. So please make sure that in any room that you're conducting the test, the room has to be well lit, it has to be well ventilated, and always keep a copy of the scale for yourself and another copy on the table with pencil for the client to use. Never share your forms with the client. Also ensure the client that you are maintaining complete confidentiality of the client's responses. Moving on, you would be scoring the items on the test. So the inventory is scored by hand, and you would give a score of 1 for every yes item that the client has tick, and a score of 0 for every no item. Then you would add up the total yes scores and you would place it on the scat inventory. What do I mean by that? So these are the raw scores and these are the page numbers. So you would be adding your scores here, and then based on whatever scores you add them up and get a total score. Going back to this slide, these are the percentile which is equivalent test scores for boys, and these are percentile equivalent scores for girls. So it would tell you to how many people fall below the client for that particular percentile the client has achieved. Okay, so how many people fall below the client? So if the client falls in the percentile of say 99 to 80 for boys, means if they have extremely high anxiety. But if they fall in the percentile of 20 to 5, that means extremely low anxiety. And how would you get these percentiles? The scores that you get, which is your total score, you would be converting it based on these tables. Table 1 is for boys, table 2 for girls. These are the scores you have to look for. So if you get a score of 20, then you would be get it would mean that your percentile is 50. So that you have to put in a table like this so that it indicates your level of anxiety. So when you write the results, you're going to divide the page in 3 columns. You would be putting down your raw scores first, followed by the percentile, and then your interpretation of the scores. In the interpretation, you will mention the client's demographic information, what Sinha's comprehensive anxiety test is, what it measures. Then the next paragraph will start from what are the scores the client has achieved and the interpretation of the scores, and then you try to triangulate the data which you gathered from your case history with the client and the primary informant of the client in order to have a clear understanding of what the client's um, level of functioning is. And then, based on that, the last paragraph should include recommendations for his treatment and prognosis plans. Conclusion: you would have to write the short description of the scores that are being obtained and the level of anxiety the client has. With this, I end my today's lecture. I hope that it was beneficial for you. Thank you. Have a good day.